Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is G. Cole, and welcome to Homegrown, where I get to share with you some good music while talking to some great people. Hello, world. I hope you're feeling as good as I am. I want to big up all my homegrown listeners out there and welcome all the new listeners. If you haven't yet subscribed, please do so we can keep you updated when new material is available. We will be posting new episodes bi-weekly. This is episode 5.
Promised land, going to the promised land. Yes, the promised land. Oh gosh, now to the promised land. Well, make a step down to Asmara, then we stopped in Addis Ababa, made our way to Shashamani land, riding on the King's Highway to the promised land. Going to the promised land, oh gosh, to the promised land, oh, to the promised land. Well, there's plenty of land for you and I, by and by. Lots of food to share for everyone. No time for segregation in the promised land. Oh gosh, take me to the promised land. Take the promised land. Oh.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Homegrown. That was Dennis Brown, Promised Land, from the album Love and Hate. This is an episode that's near and dear to me. You know, it's come up because my dad's about to retire, so it's something that's, I've been thinking about a lot lately. But what we're doing pretty much is we're talking about retirement, and as it relates to us millennials, and even more so our parents who are and should be retiring soon. Concerned as I am, I'm no expert, so I brought in an expert, financial services professional with New York Life, Mr. Marcus Moon. Marcus, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And thank you for allowing us to speak about this very, very important topic.
Oh, trust me, looking forward to it. I have been so excited. I mean, this week we're going to be focusing on retirement, but hopefully we can get you back to talk about some more financial literacy stuff, some investments, some life insurance, some wealth generation. I see we're getting some texts coming in right now and some messages coming in. As for questions that I can go over with you, which I will. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of people that have questions about this. So, guys, I got you covered. I'll make sure we get into it. But again, we're going to be talking about investments, life insurance, wealth generation, wealth preservation, and so forth. First thing I'm going to go at, Marcus, is this. I know you have a great passion, not just for the industry, but for sharing info, for educating others, and overall a passion for people.
Right.
Where did that come from? Tell us a little bit about you and how you got into this industry.
So I worked in retail for 25 years. Mm-hmm. Started off on the sales floor, worked my way up to VP general manager. Worked in a few district and regional positions as well. And then I transitioned into this new field with New York Life. And the story goes a little bit like this. When I joined New York Life had a market that was dedicated to the black market.
Right.
And the focus of that market was, simply put, closing the racial wealth gap that exists in our country.
Right.
And it really was as simple as, how do we get out into the community and get the information that we call financial literacy out into the community in all different areas, but really talking about closing that racial wealth gap, talking about multi-generational wealth, and then really getting down into the details of the building blocks towards how we do that.
Right.
And as you well know, knowledge is power.
Yes, it is.
So when I came across that market, came across a few brothers and sisters that was really sharing that message with me, I just quickly found out that this was going to be more than a job. It was going to be a calling. It was going to be an opportunity to be a part of something that I think we would all agree is critical within our community, and that is closing this racial wealth gap and really getting us back on par with where we need to be. We talk about 400 years of slavery, but what we don't talk about it was another 162 years before we entered into the financial market.
Yeah.
So when you add those two numbers together, you're talking about 562 years
Wow.
of not being in the wealth equation.
Right.
So it has really transitioned from a job to a calling, and that's what I call it. That's what I consider it to be. It's a movement that we're all a part of changing our culture to a culture to where we really talk about this as much as we talk about jobs and education. We talk about what do you do with the money when you get it.
Right.
And simply put, that's what financial literacy is.
Wow. So saying we're behind the eight balls is quite an understatement. Quite an understatement. I mean, there's a commercial on TV about retirement, kind of asking when do young people think they should start preparing for retirement. Then they asked the same question to some seniors and actually started, when did they actually start preparing for retirement? And the difference is so vast in terms of, what they did when they started and so forth. Outside of the cliche answers of immediately, at what point is it that you should pretty much be starting to put away money for retirement?
So I think it's a great question and a great conversation. And I am the type of person working in finance that I like to put numbers to every single conversation. So to answer your question, number one, it starts at age 25. And putting some simple math to it, if you think about it, from 25 to 65, you have exactly 40 years.
Right.
Now let's take a step back. You come out of college in most cases, and we're all different. But let's just do a generalized statement. Coming out of college at age 21, you get a job, entry level.
Right.
You get an about 3-4% increase every single year.
Right.
You have about a 4-year span between 21 and 25. Hopefully by 25, you're at that salary that you're feeling pretty good about. And you are now at the start line of a 40-year time period to get to 65. Any year, any month that you wait past 25, you're now cutting into those 40 years. Right. So I think if we was to ask anybody in your audience, do you want 40 years, 30 years, 20 years, or 10 years to prepare for your retirement? I am willing to guess that we're going to get a unanimous, I'll take the 40.
I'll take the 40.
So that's where that number comes from, and hopefully those numbers make sense to everybody. But the start line is 25.
I like it. Listen, the truth is, a lot of times our people go into those financial offices trying to get some information. You go in there, you come back out armed with some figures, but not very much more educated than when you went in. And I think that's half the issue. That's disheartening to a lot of people as they plan their futures right now.
Absolutely. And then the other thing I would say, when we say the start line is 25, we're being fair to everybody, and we're basing it on, again, coming out of college at 21, hopefully being at a decent salary by 25, right? But there are some things that we can do to expedite the process. So no one ever said that we can't invest in our children's retirement before they go to college. No one's ever said that. Right. So there are some things that we can do to expedite it. And I think when you talk about generational wealth, it's not just a saying, it's a process. Right. It means that as a generation, as a family, we are focused on finance from beginning to end.
Right.
So you've heard the stories of people who set up a mutual fund for their child when they were 5. Right. For the sole purpose of making sure that child has a cushion starting off with. So even though I'm speaking 25 for the general adult, right? Let us not forget that there are things that we can do when that child is a baby. Right. There's things that we can do when they're a youth to really give them a head start. No doubt. And I'm sure we'll have time to talk about some of those things as well.
Right. No doubt. Well, you know what? To piggyback off the last question too, we've established the time frame. 25 years old, just about would be the ideal time to be doing so. In your experience dealing with people on a daily basis, how many people do you actually come across that are on track for that are actually putting away money at 25 or so forth?
No, I would say the average person that I come across, and I'm sorry to say it, could be 40.
Wow.
And maybe having the first conversation about retirement.
Wow.
So I would say on average between 35 and 40 is what I see for the most part.
It's crazy.
And I think the better thing to say is this. We're here to talk about retirement, but at the end of the day, we're talking about financial literacy. So when people don't know something, they're not going to do it.
True.
And the word that we're really talking about right now is immortality. When I'm 21, 23, 25, 30,
I'll live forever.
I'm going to live forever.
Yep.
I have plenty of time. So the reason that I love to say the start line is 25 is that it quantifies for the individual to understand that you are in a race.
Right.
The start line was at 25.
Right.
And again, I say, how much do you want to decrease your time by? And that's what this is really all about. So the immortality word makes people think I can wait until I'm 30. I can wait until I'm 40. I might could wait till I'm 45, right? Because from 45 to 65, I still got 20 years.
Ton of time.
I got a ton of time.
Ton of time.
So I think the bigger issue here is just understanding from a financial literacy standpoint time horizon.
Right.
And time horizon is the word that we use when we're talking about investments. Time horizon is the word that we use when we're talking about compounding interest.
Right.
Time horizon is the word that we use when we're talking about growing money. So the question really just comes down to how much time do you want?
And indeed, that is the question. How much time do you want? Ladies and gentlemen, there's so much more to get into when we get back. Keep it moving, keep it grooving. It's Homegrown.
Coming but slowly. I know it's gonna last forever. I feel it's coming closer, closer and closer. It's the time we get it together. Whoa, I know you done a lot of wrong, but I'm willing to forgive. No one has the right to decide how the other man should live. Sometimes we should stop and count to 10 before we make each other hurt. Cause later on you realize it really had no worth. I see love from a distance, coming but slowly. I know it's gonna last forever. I feel us getting closer, closer and closer. It's the time we get it together. Whoa, whoa. Mama, she's taught us for so long with her heart all full of tears, and the wisdom in her eyes kept me safe through all the years. Make me grow to understand that there's still good folks around, and to keep it in our hearts is to be on solid ground. I see love from a distance, coming but slowly. I know it's gonna last forever. I feel it's getting closer, closer and closer. It's the time.
Yeah, man, that's the legendary Barris Hammond, Love from a Distance. Listen, we're having a fantastic conversation. Who have ears to hear, let them hear. Listen, a question I wonder, with social media, with YouTube, with the course of continuous information streaming to our phones right now, do you think people are really aware of how little they may be able to benefit from Social Security? Or do you think that people are really walking around with somewhat I guess what I would consider a false sense of security when it comes to their future Social Security benefits?
So listen, I think social media, YouTube, all of the information that's out there is great to have. You know, we're in an information generation, and there's nothing wrong with information. I think where the problem comes in is what does information do to us from a negative perspective. My wife wasn't very happy when I thought that YouTube taught me how to do plumbing. And that's what generally happens. You know, it's one thing to have the information. It's another thing to believe that you're the expert and maybe step out and do some things on your own that maybe you shouldn't do. But I think the information is great. I think, listen, if a young child is on YouTube and they're reading about Social Security, they're reading about Medicare. They're watching videos about Social Security, Medicare, about an RRA, a traditional RRA, whatever it may be. There's nothing harmful about that.
Right.
What becomes harmful is when that person says, okay, now I know, so I'm going to step out and do it on my own, and not seek counsel or seek wisdom from someone else that does it for a living. So I would just simply say, use the information to be aware, so that you don't have an individual come and tell you something, and you're just taking their word for it,
Because you don't know.
versus you having the information. Because if you have the information now, I can have a conversation with you.
Right.
If I don't have the information, you can tell me anything,
Right.
and I don't care who you are. I wouldn't put my retirement in the hands of just one person telling me everything and I don't know anything.
Yep.
So I love social media. I love YouTube. I love Facebook. I love all of the dialogue. I think information should be accessible.
Right.
My message to the audience would be, use that information to have an effective dialogue with an expert. Seek counsel and wisdom in all that you do. And I think you'll be on the right path.
Wow. It's amazing because, we have these conversations. Like I said, majority of people my age, we're not close to the retirement pocket, but our parents are. And as we sit and talk to them or even talk to each other, a lot of people don't know that much about it. All they know pretty much is that, I'm working, some money's coming out of my check, and at retirement age, I'm going to be eligible for some benefits.
Right.
And again, it's a scenario too. Some people are not contributing based on the fact that one, they may not be working. They may be working, for lack of a better word, under the table or something. But again, that false sense of security. We have time, and you go to bed at 40, wake up at 60.
Yeah, so I think, so I heard two things from you. Number one, there are some people who are not contributing because they don't feel that financially they can.
Right.
So that's one thing we can touch on. The second thing I heard from you is you could have a situation where people feel that their retirement is on autopilot.
Yeah.
And we can touch on that. So I'll touch on those two things. Autopilot first, and then we'll come back to why are we not contributing.
Right.
So the autopilot conversation is real easy, and I'll keep everything very simple. If you were to get a job tomorrow, and you walk into the office, and the person says to you, okay, we have this 401k plan, and we just want to know from you, do you want to contribute to it? And we also want to know, are you moderate, conservative, aggressive, or very aggressive?
Right.
You answer those two questions. Yes, I want to contribute, and I just want to be conservative.
Right.
And then that's the end of the discussion. Okay, my question to the audience would be, does that sound like a sound strategy for retirement?
No.
No. So the first thing that we have to understand is that this is a very serious conversation. You're talking about the rest of your life when you're no longer able to work. Am I going to have $1 million, $1.5 million
Right.
sitting there to carry me over a 20, 30, 40-year period? So the conversation can't simply be, am I moderate? Am I conservative? Am I aggressive? Am I very aggressive? The conversation can't simply be, yes, I want to contribute. The conversation has to be a little bit more like this. What is the match that I'm going to receive? So if I contribute 3%, are you doing 50 cents on a dollar? Are you doing dollar for dollar? So are you doing a 50% match or are you doing a 100% match? Right. That's question number one. Because at the end of the day, that's what makes the 401k powerful with your company, is the contribution or the match from the company. Otherwise, you're basically doing an individual retirement account. So that's number one. Am I getting a match? Number two is, how is my money being invested? Because when it comes to investment portfolios, there are several ways that we can invest your money. We can go heavy in equities. We can go heavy in bonds. We can go heavy international, precious metals. There's so many different things that we can do. So if no one's sitting down with you, walking you through the investment portfolio options, then I'm concerned. So then number three, what is my time horizon? What is my investment objective? What is required in order for me to reach a goal of $1 million? Well, no one's having those conversations with me. Then I fast forward to, if I have a 401k, I'm supposed to receive quarterly reports. Well, autopilot means when a quarterly report comes in, it gets thrown in the garbage can with every other junk mail piece that we don't have a need to look at. And one of my biggest concerns when I sit down with people and talk about retirement, the first thing I'm going to say is, when was the last time you reviewed your quarterly report? Right. And in most cases, we haven't reviewed the quarterly report. We don't know how the money's been invested. We don't understand the match. We don't understand the time horizon, and we don't know what's going to be there in the end. So I would just simply put that out there, that those are the questions that we want to ask. And if those questions can't be answered at the job, then seek a professional that can answer those questions for you.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Because I'll speak from personal experience. Every time I've ever, started a new job, I've always participated, taking advantage of the 401k and the retirement benefits. And you're absolutely correct. You're not given any information, you're not really educated on it, partially because probably the people who are helping you aren't that educated on it themselves, but they'll point you in one direction. Like you said, choose one of these four: aggressive, moderate, or whatever. But in terms of Social Security, what are some of the biggest misconceptions out there about Social Security? And what are some things that you do think people really need to know about Social Security and their benefits that they're supposed to have?
So I believe the number one biggest misconception is that it's going to be there, and that it is a primary retirement source of income. And Social Security is not a primary source of retirement income. It is a supplemental source of retirement income.
Right.
So that's the number one misconception, is that Social Security will be enough for me. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. The second misconception is, if there's one thing that we should be reading about, and if there's one thing that we should educate ourselves about, is how does Social Security actually work? So, for example, work credits. You have to work over a 10-year period to qualify for Social Security. And there's X amount of credits that you have to build up over that period.
So hold up. So if I plan on retiring at 65, but I didn't start working until I was 58.
Then you might not have enough credits built up to have a sizable Social Security check coming.
I'm gonna get something though.
It's not gonna be very much, but it's all dependent upon. And here's the thing about Social Security.
Right.
Social Security is based off of your earnings.
Right.
It's based off of the amount of time that you've worked. Again, there's a 10-year period, for you to go through a vetting period to be able to receive the full credits. To answer your earlier question, you can start receiving Social Security as early as 62.
Right.
However, the longer you hold off, and there's varying different opinions about this, but here's the reality. The longer you hold off past age 62, you build up more credits towards your Social Security.
Gotcha.
So ideally, when you're thinking about retirement, you're really thinking about order of liquidation. So when I enter into retirement, what am I going to liquidate first? Is it going to be my stocks and bonds? Is it going to be my 401k? Is it going to be my Roth IRA?
Right.
Is it going to be Social Security? What I find in most cases is that you have people who will start drawing from Social Security as soon as they are eligible for it.
Right.
In most cases, that might be the smallest amount of source of income that you have in retirement. So the name of the game when it comes to retirement is making the retirement last.
Right.
So if I can delay Social Security and allow for it to pick up more credits, thus increasing my amount, I can now make it last longer.
So in other words, not exactly pulling from Social Security at 65.
Not unless you have to. And it's going to change per person. Now listen, I can't sit here and say what everybody's situation is.
Right.
But if I'm sitting down with you today at age 30, 40, then we're going to build a plan to where hopefully there's not a need to pull from Social Security until the very last moment when it's been maximized.
Gotcha.
And that's a terminology that we like to use, maximize Social Security. Well, maximize Social Security simply means make it last as long as we can possibly make it last.
Right.
So that means talking about order of liquidation. That means making sure that we're strengthening the other sources of retirement income.
Right.
So that we can save the smallest one to the very end point, if that's what we're able to do. Now, everybody's situation is going to be different. And this conversation changes based off of age and time horizon. Right. Some people, because of the decisions that they've made, have no choice but to pull from Social Security. Right. But from an educational standpoint, again, you pick up about 8% credits once you get past 62. If you can hold out, the last point that you can hold out to is age 70. If you can hold out to that point, you've maximized the Social Security. Right. You're at a point to where you're getting the most out of it that you can get. Most people who disagree with that statement will say, I want to start getting as early as I can because I don't think the money's going to be there. Well, that might not be an effective strategy, right. But I do understand the thought process. But from a strategy standpoint, it doesn't add up. And then the other point that I'll go back to is why are we not contributing to retirement? Right. Why we don't contribute to retirement is that it's a perspective issue and it's a money management issue. Right. The perspective issue is I don't have the financial resources to contribute to my retirement, and I see retirement as last. Right. First is I have to pay my bills. First is I have to provide for my family. Retirement is last. Well, that's a false perspective because in the end, when you're no longer able to work and you need income, you're probably not going to feel the same way at that point. True. Number two, money management keeps us from contributing to retirement because we don't have emergency funds, we don't have a budget, we don't have a cash flow. We're spending more than we should, and so therefore we don't feel that there's anything left to contribute to the retirement. Well, the issue with that statement is, number one, retirement should always be first, pre-tax, before you get the check. We call that paying yourself first. Yep. Right? Yep. And then you proceed from there with after-tax dollars that will go towards something like a Roth IRA or an investment fund or whatever it may be. But from a perspective standpoint, we have to understand what comes first. Right. And what comes first is your future. When you're no longer able to work, you're no longer able to provide for yourself, that's when retirement becomes crucial and important to you. So it's very important from a perspective standpoint that we keep first.
Right.
And retirement has to be first.
Absolutely. Listen, when we get back, we're going to get into some of these different retirement options, show more information on the 401ks and the different types of IRAs. A whole lot more to come. Keep it moving, keep it grooving. It's Homegrown.
Oh, yes, no. Oh, yes, no. Oh, yes, no. Oh, yes, no. If you did prepare for those rainy days, you wouldn't be swept away by the storm. If you would listen what the wise men say, all that you had wouldn't be gone. If you would trust into the Father and find a few minutes to pray, yeah. No, life seems so much harder. I know Jah will show you the way. That one your name rise up, and your heart it must be clean. But if you mingle in a corruption, Jah no let you win. I trust in the highest supreme. Jah make I am pure as a stream. Never will I trade my love for vanity. Never will I be a victim of them insanity. All I have is love for humanity. Come let me sing that song, yeah, if you agree with me. Yeah, if you did prepare for those rainy days, you wouldn't be swept away by the storm. If you would listen what the wise men say, all that you had wouldn't be gone. If you would trust into the Father, find a few minutes to pray. Yeah, life seems so much harder. I know Jah will show you the way. Yeah. Don't burn the bridges, don't you ever turn your back and close the door. Cause it just might be that you wanna use that same bridge once more. The sun sets in the west, representing a new dawn. Continue to do your best and life goes on and on. If you did prepare for those rainy days, you wouldn't be swept away by the storm. If you would listen what the wise men say, all that you had wouldn't be gone. If
if you would trust into the Father and find a few minutes to pray. Yeah, now life seems so much harder. I know Jah will show you the way. Not gonna be no part of them controversy.
Yeah, man, and that is Gentleman, all that you had from the album Confidence. The questions that I'm going to get into here are not necessarily for the retirees or the potential retirees, but for the children of those people that are about to retire. You know, because there's stuff that they've got to deal with too. So this one is more coming from the standpoint of the children, of the kids of those that are about to retire. Because a lot of times it's a sensitive subject. You know, it shouldn't be, but sometimes it is. One of the main reasons the topic even came about is because my father's about to retire.
Right.
He's not necessarily great, but he's okay. If he manages his finances properly, he'll be okay. With all the things that he's set forth in terms of investments, in terms of his home and so forth, he'll be all right. But again, I know a lot of others that are not in that situation. Now, on behalf of the kids of those people, and they want to make sure that their parents are paying attention. Subtly, how do they encourage or advise their parents to start paying attention to their retirement plans, even though they're closer to retirement than, they should be?
So I talked earlier about the quarterly reports.
Mm-hmm.
So if we go back again to the autopilot conversation, you have to understand that there's a tremendous amount of people who believe that the retirement is going to be there.
Right.
Just because from a cultural standpoint, we've just been taught that if you contribute to the 401k, if you do all the right things, in the end, you're going to be fine.
Right.
So to answer your question, it's really a very simple answer. Is pulling that quarterly report, pulling the retirement statement, sit down at the kitchen table with your parent, and you actually show them what's there. It could be the first time that person has seen the actual numbers. And once a person, and that's why I speak so highly about reading quarterly reports.
Right.
You can see the rate of return that you're getting. You see how your money's being invested. But more importantly, you see what's there.
Right.
So if you're sitting down with your dad and your dad is 54 years old and you pull that quarterly report and there's $250,000 sitting there, right?
Right.
And we just do some simple math. $1 million is $50,000 a year for 20 years.
Right.
So if I retire at 65 with $1 million, that means I have $50,000 a year for 20 years.
Right.
If I don't pass away at 85, I'm out of money.
Right.
So if all I have is $350,000 or $250,000,
sticky.
That's not going to be 20 years
Worth of retirement money.
Right. So to simply answer your question, and it's not just an answer for people who are about to retire.
Right.
That's the answer to the question for people who are just starting. Because if you can keep that number in front of your face and you're looking at that report, then you're never going to fall asleep at the wheel. You're never going to make assumptions.
True.
And you're never going to believe that the money's just there. Same thing with Social Security.
Right.
You can go to the Social Security website right now, enter your information, and they will actually show you how much you have coming in Social Security. Doesn't matter what age you are.
Right.
So we don't have to sit back and be on autopilot. We can actually be a little bit more proactive and take control over what's going on by simply being aware. Because once I'm aware, I'm empowered to take action.
Right.
But if I'm making assumptions because I don't want to see it, I don't want to know how bad it is because now I'm stressed, which is not good for my health. And so a lot of times we have to be honest. A lot of times we will avoid things that we don't want to see.
Right.
That's why, as black men, sometimes we don't go to the doctor.
Yep.
Because we just don't want to find out that we have this or we have that. So it's the same thing with our retirement accounts. We don't want to see what's there. We don't want to face the reality that now I'm not going to be able to live life now the way that I'm living it. I'm going to have to make some sacrifices because now I need to do more contributions.
Gotcha. And I've always encouraged my father to speak to, a financial professional. I do as much research as I can, but I'm not a professional. He lives a state away. So when he goes in, he's there by himself. Sometimes he'll conference me in or so forth, just so I can hear. Again, I'm no genius or no expert on the subject, but if something doesn't sound right, it doesn't sound right. From his standpoint, when he leaves, or when in general, and a lot of times when people leave the financial advisor's office, you're not much more in the know than when you went in because of the language used and so forth. I noticed that your approach is different, and you want people educated. Where is that a personal? Where did that approach come from, and why that way instead of being like everyone else?
Well, listen, I would say two things. Number one, I worked in retail for 25 years. So I was a coach and a developer. So
Right.
developing people was my job. Coaching people was my job. Inspiring people to do more was my job. But let's just keep it real for a second. If you come in, you sit down in my office, and you're more confused when you leave than when you came,
Right.
then obviously you're already talking to the wrong person,
Yep.
right? So we all know the answer to this question.
Right.
The good teachers in our lives, the good mentors in our lives, are not the people who try to sound the smartest, but they're the people who breaks it down to a point to where you can understand it.
Yep.
And if I'm working in financial services and I'm not helping you to understand, then I'm not providing you a service.
Right.
So that's what it is for me.
I threw that out there primarily because I've always encouraged him and any other that, listen, not because you walked into the office and the nameplate's there. If you're not comfortable, if you don't understand what's going on in one, maybe you're in the wrong place, or two, maybe you need to ask some more questions. So for those that are listening, I just want them to know pretty much that it is let's face it can be a little intimidating. So but don't feel like you can't ask more questions. Don't feel like you can't get a second opinion. Just like if you go to the doctor, hear what you want to hear.
And I would just say something. It's really not that it's complicated. Listen, if I went and sat down with a plumber right now, everything that he says about plumbing is going to be complicated to me because I just don't know.
Right. True.
Right? So I love what you said earlier. You have to research on your own. And when you go and sit down with a financial person, already have some questions in mind
Right.
that you're going to ask. But again, if that person isn't breaking it down to a point to where you understand, then that's not the right person for you.
Right.
Because the whole reason you sat down with me in the first place was because you wanted to understand. So if I'm saying big words and overcomplicating things so that you can't understand, then you already know that what's in my heart is I want to make you dependent upon me.
Yes.
So
Yep.
a good advisor, a good mentor, a good teacher, their goal is never to make you dependent. Their goal is to make you knowledgeable.
Right.
So that we can work together as a team to accomplish the goal.
Amen. Amen. And my outlook on it too is pretty much, listen, it's never too late for a shower of rain. It's never too late. And the best time to start is now. The worst time to start is never. If someone is fast approaching retirement, but doesn't have much set aside, what advice do you give to them so they can, and I'm going to say this, play catch up over the next few years and be prepared somewhat? I mean, if you're already behind 8 ball, you're not going to be that much prepared, but to prepare yourself somewhat to be living off of a fixed income.
So first of all, retirement vehicles or retirement instruments have catch-up provisions. So, for example, a Roth IRA is $5,500 on an annualized basis that you can put into an IRA period. However, once you are past age 50, you can up that to $6,500. If you have a spouse, you can do additional contribution as well.
Right.
But if we're being honest for a second, irregardless, $5,500 on an annualized basis is about $400 a month.
Right.
Okay. So if you're quickly approaching retirement and you're behind, and I'm telling you, you can go from $400 a month to about $600 a month, but you don't have the financial resources to do that, that's probably not making you feel very good.
No.
Okay.
Not at all.
So the truth is this. If you are fast approaching retirement and you feel that you are behind, then you really have to sit down with someone first to understand, is there surplus in my budget and my cash flow?
Right.
If we're being honest.
Right.
And then my question to you is always going to be, what are you prepared to do? Because this is a sacrifice conversation.
Right.
So anybody's ever seen The Matrix before, when it comes to finance, it's not a red pill and a blue pill. It gets real simple. You're behind. What are you prepared to do to catch up?
Right.
Where are we going to pull the money from? What are we going to sacrifice? How are we going to restructure the budget? How are we going to restructure our expenses so that we can reposition the assets towards retirement?
Right.
So I could sit here and say a lot of fancy things. I could sit here and say a lot of language about catching up in retirement, but the reality is it starts with the individual's ability to restructure their expenses.
Right.
I'm just being honest.
No, I gotcha. And you know what? That is somewhat comforting because you know what? For those people who feel like they're behind the eight ball, there's always this concern of, can I do anything? Is there anything I can do? And in general conversation, people feel like there isn't. You know, but it's good to know that there is and that they can.
Yes, there are catch-up provisions that are attached to each retirement instrument. So the good news is the catch-up provision is there. The challenging news is, again, how are we going to find the resources to maximize the catch-up provision?
Gotcha.
So that would be the key in the conversation. So what I would say to your audience is, if you're in that position, what you're going to want to do is sit down with someone that is prepared to have that conversation with you, in addition to offering you an additional IRA or offering you a SEP IRA or a simple IRA or a 401k,
Right.
whatever it may be. You're not in a place where you just need somebody to offer you something. You're in a place where you need somebody to help you develop a financial plan
Right.
that will reposition the resources to be able to help you to catch up. So this is not a one-sided conversation. Cool. And I just can't say this enough. Avoid the transactional people and look for the people that's helping you to build a plan.
Oh, wow. Please repeat that.
Avoid the transactional people and look for the people who are helping you to build a plan.
I think that is just so very important. Just wanted to make sure everybody heard that. Listen, when we get back, we're going to be getting into 401ks and the different type of IRAs and so forth that you can get into. So keep it moving, keep it grooving. It's Homegrown.
I can't believe you treat me like this. I mean, I give you all I got. And you're gonna go break my heart. You're just gonna walk away as if I meant nothing to you. But it's so unkind of you. Finally, the words are spoken. You said you wanna leave me. Now that you got me open, you no longer need me. I was blind and I couldn't see all the signs you were showing me. I was living out my fantasy, thinking you and I, we were meant to be. With my silly heart, my silly dreams, silly highs, silly things they seen. Stupid me, loving you. Oh baby, look what you do to my silly heart, my silly dreams, silly highs, silly things they seen. Stupid me, loving you. Oh baby, look what you do. I remember when you would come crying, telling me that your woman, she was lying. You said she cheated with another man. You give it all you got and all that you can. I took you in, I didn't ask any questions. All my friends came and made their suggestions. Now you walking through my doors, the tears are falling. You don't love me no more. You broke my silly heart, my silly dreams, silly highs, silly things they seen. Stupid me, loving you. Oh baby, look what you do to my silly heart, my silly dreams, silly highs, silly things they seen. Stupid me.
Yes. That is Lady Saw, a.k.a. Marion Hall with Silly Dreams. I just love it when Lady Saw sings. One of my favorite. Saw, if you're listening to the program, I need to get you on soon. All right, so we're back talking about retirement. For me, when I sat down to put the concept together, the question was really retirement. Are we ready to retire? Or should I say, are we not retiring? Or are we not able to retire? The concept of retirement or planning your retirement, Marcus, does seem scary. This is, we're talking about people's hard-earned dollars here. We're talking about, and nobody wants to see their retirement go up in smoke. I think it's a big fear that people have. Also, there's that fear of what's over the hill. Let's keep it real. I've been working since I'm 20 years old. Not the most financially savvy guy, but of course, concerned about those post-work days. Is it cool to rely on just a 401k from work or your Roth? If this is something that you're contributing to for 40 years, and I'm asking it from this standpoint because a lot of people are, again, simple with what they're doing. If I'm contributing to my 401k from the age of 20, the age of 25, nothing spectacular, nothing overly aggressive, am I going to be able to retire in 40 years?
So that is that's a very deep question. And the true answer is I can't answer that question without looking at more details.
Okay.
But here's the answer that I can answer. Mm-hmm. It is never good to have all your eggs in one basket.
Right.
Okay, so diversification is a word that we use very often, which simply means you want to have your money in different buckets,
Right.
in different places. You want to create as many sources of income as you can for your retirement years.
Right.
So let's do a scenario here, because your first question was, is my 401k enough? Generally speaking, I would say no.
Right.
And let's talk about why. Number one, if your 401k is the only thing that you have, it would defeat what I just said, because all your eggs is in one basket.
Right.
We go back to Enron. When Enron went belly up, all the people who had all their money in just those 401ks, if I'm not mistaken, they lost those 401ks.
Everything.
Lost everything, right?
Everything.
And then we heard back in 2007, 2008, when we had the big market crash, a lot of people lost
Everything.
everything.
Yeah.
So when I say don't have all your eggs in one basket, that includes the retirement basket. Because we don't have to just have a conversation about 401ks and IRAs.
Right. We
We also have stocks, bonds, we have real estate,
Right.
we have real estate investment trusts. I mean, we have a lot of different things that we can talk about.
Right.
We have government securities. I mean, we could just go on and on and on
Right.
about all of the different instruments that are out there. So I think realistically, let's just really go back and have this conversation. So I don't want to have all my eggs in one basket.
Right.
My 401k, what makes it an attractive retirement vehicle is the match.
Right.
Now, the best match I can get is a 100% match,
Hopefully.
right? Dollar for dollar.
Right.
Not so good would be 50% match, but it's better than zero.
Sure is.
So realistically, once I'm getting the match and I'm maximizing that free money that's sitting there that my company is providing, I am now in a place where I can go out on my own and also have a Roth or traditional IRA in addition to my 401k. But the
Right.
key word that I said is out on my own.
Right. Right.
That way, if something does happen with the job, at least some of your money was separate in a
Right.
different account. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Because the max you can put into a 401k is $18,000 a year. Well, everybody's not going to put $18,000 a year
Off their salary.
of their salary into a 401k. If you
Right.
can, great. Wouldn't advise it because, again, you want to diversify and move the funds around.
Right.
But that's the max that you can put into a 401k. So traditionally speaking, I want to make sure I'm getting the match. Above and beyond the match, I can diversify. Maybe I go into a Roth. Maybe I go into a traditional IRA. Maybe I go into the market.
Gotcha.
You know, maybe I look for safety in an annuity or a CD. We can go on and on and on, but the answer to your question is I want to diversify as much as I can.
Right.
That way, if one market falls or one situation falls, I at least have a backup plan.
Well, I mean, yeah, I definitely think that's the way to go. And being that a diversified portfolio is the best way to go. I mean, there's some things that are more popular than others, just from a name standpoint. So, what are the primary differences, if we can explain, between the 401k and the IRA?
So, the better question would be, what's the difference between a Roth IRA and a traditional IRA? Because the difference between the 401k and an RRA is in the name. An RRA is an individual retirement account,
Right.
right? A 401k is you're sponsored by the company. The company is making a contribution, and you're making a contribution, and you're getting a match. Whereas in an RRA, you're not going to get a match
Okay.
unless it is a simple RRA that a small business owner has a simple RRA. He's able to make matches through the simple RRA for his employees.
Right. Right. I do know though of some companies that actually offer IRAs though.
You do have companies that offer IRAs. And the reason they do that is because they want to have a one-stop shop place where their employees can get everything in one place. But
Right.
typically they're working through a broker or an outside resource to do that.
I gotcha.
So the biggest difference between an RRA and a 401k is going to be the match portion and the part where you're in an individual account where you control and you're dealing with the money. So now let's talk about the difference between traditional and Roth.
Right.
The big difference is with a traditional RA, the money's coming out before taxes,
Right.
right? So it comes directly off of your check before you actually receive the after-tax dollars. With a Roth IRA, you are taking your money that's already been taxed and you're putting it into a Roth IRA. So it is an after-tax contribution. Now, what is the purpose of one versus the other? It's all about, do I need tax relief now or do I need tax relief later? So what do I mean by that? Traditional IRAs are tax deductible.
Right.
Roth IRAs are not tax deductible. Tax deductible simply means if I'm in a situation where I need a tax break right now, I'm in a tax bracket, but through deductions, maybe I can come down to a lower tax bracket.
Right.
That's where that traditional IRA is going to come in handy.
Right.
Because you're getting those tax deductions now versus later. With a Roth IRA, you're putting in money that's already been taxed, which is why the Roth IRA is tax-free.
Right.
The money continues to grow tax-free, comes out tax-free.
Right. So it's now or later.
With a traditional IRA, you're paying the taxes later, but you're paying them at a lower tax bracket because when I retire, I'm not going to be at the same tax bracket that I am now.
Right.
Hopefully. Hopefully I'm at a lower tax bracket. So the tax break is going to be better at that time period. So it really just comes down to what is your tax need
Right.
more than anything. Because
gotcha.
that's what those accounts are really all about. It's all about maximizing taxes, having a good tax diversification strategy, and not having all of your eggs in a taxable bucket.
Right.
Right? Because when you look at taxables, you got taxable, you have tax deductible, and you have tax free.
Right.
There's not a financial instrument that exists that can give you all three of those things.
Right. Right.
Not a single financial instrument that's going to give you all three of those things. They're going to give you one or two, or maybe one, but they're not going to give you all three. So it really comes down to the tax conversation. And then there's one last thing that I'll bring up about the traditional, the difference between traditional and Roth is required minimum distributions. With a Roth IRA, there's not a required minimum distribution. Required minimum distribution simply means if you have a traditional IRA at age 70,
Right.
you have to start taking distributions from that account.
You have to.
You have to, at age, or you're penalized.
Right. Right.
With a Roth IRA, there's no penalties. There's not any what's called RMDs. So you don't have a requirement minimum distribution with Roth IRAs. So from a distribution standpoint, it's also important to understand the difference between a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA. So there's tax implications on the front end
Right.
or the back end, and then there's distribution to think about from a required minimum distribution standpoint.
Wow. So I guess, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of this has to do with when you get to that point of retirement or that age of retirement, how much do you need to survive, and what other avenues you have set up to get this money from.
And that's the reason I said earlier is just kind of understanding how $1 million works, because I use $1 million because we all like to throw around that number. But $1 million is $50,000 a year for 20 years. Now, that only works for you if the house is paid off, you don't have a car note, right?
Right.
Because you're retired. Your expenses,
the kids are out of college.
The kids are gone. They're kicked out of the house, right? And so there's nobody left over, but you and your spouse.
Right.
So that $50,000 a year equation may work for you. But again, it comes down to time horizon. If I'm a female, $50,000 a year for 20 years might not mean that much to me because females are living longer. I believe the averages are getting up to almost 92 in age. So if I'm a female, I might need $1.5 million.
Are they killing us, or is it just health?
Well, it's just no. We don't take care of ourselves. So for a guy, and specifically, we're talking about black men.
Right.
We're more likely to pass away. Age 82, 85. Now, we're living longer as well.
Right.
But we're still in that range. So when you're thinking about retirement, you really got to think about family history. Mm-hmm. If you come from a family full of people who live into their hundreds, your retirement strategy can't be the same as somebody that's coming from a family of people who traditionally, don't live into the 80s.
Right.
So that's something else that you have to factor into the equation. And I don't mean to simplify everything, but the reality is that's what the retirement game is all about. It's about expected life expectancy, traditionally speaking, how long am I going to be around, and making sure that I have the funds to cover that time period.
Right. So I guess there's a lot more to pay attention to than just the financial metrics. It's like you said, health, family history, what's going on, and so forth. If I know that I'm clocking at around 50, I'm spending it all by 49.
One of the first questions I ask when I sit down with someone is I say, from a family perspective,
right?
The men in your family live to what age? The women in your family live to what age? Mm-hmm. And you have to use family history as a guide because it helps you to kind of figure out, what is the right number for you.
Right.
In addition to, what do you want your life to look like? Are you a world traveler? Okay, well, maybe we need a little bit more.
Right.
Are you somebody that's just going to stay here in Florida and take it easy? Then maybe we can make it by. But really, all jokes aside,
right.
We have to factor that in. What do you want your lifestyle to look like? And then we factor that into the plan, and we have the instruments in place to make sure we're achieving the goal.
Right.
So that's what that looks like.
All right, so that's some very good information on the different strategies, and we're gonna get into some more stuff in a minute. Don't go anywhere. Keep it moving, keep it grooving. It is Homegrown.
Deeds are fruits, words are but leaves. It's better to do well than to say well indeed. So if you come from the rock, please don't run from the rock. Keep your conscience clean and put the weight on your back. A foolish builder leaves out the cornerstone, but every dog feels like a lion in his home. My destiny, it's in my own hands, 'cause the child is the father of the man. So I'm the keeper of the flame, and everybody knows his name. I'm the keeper of the flame, but nobody knows the pain. I'm the keeper of the flame, and everybody knows his name.
Raga, it's been a minute, man. Let's go. I went from cavemen to slave men. Church scream amen and then they lynch men. Bought y'all the 911 before the world trade. I saw the world through Ray Charles shades. Try to warn them, they ain't wanna listen. Nostradamus saw the birds, now there's two things missing. Two sons sitting, Hussein's son sitting so calm. They father Saddam hung in the prison. I'd be damned if a man put a check in my hand, had me in the sand, shooting at the brown man. Runner becomes the gunner become the hunter become the 100 on America's Most Wanted. How does America's Most Wanted get apprehended? When his man turns state on his co-defendant. You need a lawyer, let me talk for you. You in the wheelchair, blood, let me walk for you. I'm a leader.
Yes. And that is Stephen Marley featuring Wyclef from the album Revelation Part 2, Fruits of Life. I really like that album. A lot of knowledge going on that album. We're talking about retirement. You know, sometimes I got, we all have different sets of friends. You got that set of friends over there, that set of friends over there. And sometimes I'm talking and I get the looks like, dude, retirement. But it is something that I find so important, not only because of the fact that I'm looking at, my father, who, in my eyes, I'm thinking of somebody who is that solid, strong person that I've known. And now I'm looking at him, still in good shape, but not that same solid person. He's aging. So we need to start taking those precautions. But what it says to me pretty much is that it's just a cycle. It's going to be, I'm next. I'm next in line to be the not as strong and solid as I am right now. So in my helping to make sure that he's ready, at the same time, I am learning so that I can make sure that I am ready. One of my retirement strategies is to make sure that, and this is just mine, to make sure that my home or homes, if I can make that happen, are paid off before I retire. Because as far as I'm concerned, most of my income goes toward mortgage. And for those people who rent, most of their income goes toward rent. So if I minimize that expenditure later when I'm on a fixed income, then to me, I'm one step closer to being safer in my retirement. Is that a safe outlook or is it not?
No, you just nailed it. Retirement is not about paying the same bills that you paid when you were working and making more. Right. So the reality is, the best retirement strategy is to have everything paid off. Because if everything's not paid off, look at what I said about $1 million. Mm-hmm. If $1 million is $50,000 a year for 20 years, if I was to say to you right now, I'll give you $50,000 a year for 20 years, you would say, Marcus, you're crazy. I can't live off of that. The reason you can't live off of it is what you just said. You have mortgages, you have expenses that $50,000 a year is not going to take care of. So the reason that $1 million works in retirement is because I don't have bills like I have now. Right. My bills are limited. The other reason why it's important to make sure that everything's paid off by that point and that all the kids are out of the house is because you do have this other thing that you're going to be dealing with in retirement, and that's called health expenses. Yeah. So health expenses are one of the number one reasons why people's retirement plans fail. Right. It's because the health expenses were never built into the retirement plan. Right. And that's one of the reasons why we spend a great deal amount of time talking about long-term care. How are you going to pay for the nursing home expenses? How are you going to pay for the nurse that has to come and stay at home with you and provide care to you? So long-term care is something that is very often left out of the retirement planning conversation, and people are left in situations to where they can't afford to pay for those different expenses that come up. Right. Whether it's long-term care, health insurance, disability, all of these things, which I call the foundation of a financial house, these are the things that break up the plan. Wow. More so than some of the other conversations that we have. So to answer your question, absolutely. When we retire, we don't want to have the same bills and the same debt that we have right now. You talk about debt-free, being financially free in our working years. Right. Well, that's critical in our retirement years because we can't have debt in our retirement years. Right. Because we're on a fixed income. We're on a fixed income that in most cases is going to be smaller than the income that we had in our working years. Right. So everything has to be in its proper place. But I can't stress enough talking about the health expense side of retirement and making sure that when you're sitting down with a financial professional that is a part of the conversation.
You're right, because it's a part of the conversation that's oftentimes left off. We don't talk about that. We're also going to ask about even getting some more information, getting into the long-term care aspect of it. But you're absolutely right. There's like I mentioned earlier, there's certain things that kind of they're punchlines, they're keywords and key topics and key phrases.
Absolutely.
The ROTs, the 401ks and stuff like that. But health issues, one bad situation can lead you to bankruptcy. You can have $2 million sitting down on, and tomorrow somebody asks you why you're broke. Well, I fell ill. I went into the hospital.
Absolutely.
But we're hoping that part doesn't happen. But in terms of the long-term health care, what kind of options are there for those? I do know that, and of course, as you get the benefits from work and so forth, it's something that I mention in it, but it's also very fleeting. They don't mention that much as much. Again, they give you the 4 little pointers on the 401k, and if that's all they're giving you on 401k, can you imagine what they're giving you on long-term health care? It's in the bottom of the packet, and you can choose to read it or not, and oftentimes it's not. We're not going to read it. What briefly, what information you can give us on long-term health care?
So in regards to, I'm not an expert when it comes to healthcare. So what I would advise everyone to do, listen, we're in a time right now where healthcare is actually a big topic.
Yeah.
Right? It's a big topic for a reason. Because there's a lot of changes that are on the horizon for healthcare.
Yeah.
But I am not a healthcare expert. What I would advise everyone to do is, as you are sitting down with your financial advisors, your financial planners, you want to make sure that you have a healthcare expert that you're sitting down with, maybe outside of your job, that can give you more detailed options on what's out there. But I can't speak to that. What I can speak to is from a long-term care perspective. That is something that I deal with.
Right.
And there are 3 levels in regards to long-term care. There are standalone long-term care plans.
Right.
You can add long-term care, or what we call chronic care, onto a life insurance policy. And if you're not able to perform 5 out of the 3 out of the 5 functions, then that chronic care rider can kick in.
Right.
And pay for some of your long-term care expenses. And then we have Asset Preserver, which is more of a high-end long-term care package. But it really just comes down to understanding what is it that you want to pay into. What are you looking forward to doing? Are you one of those people who say, I want to stay in my home and have an at-home nurse?
Right.
Are you one of those people who say, you know what, I'm going to pay a family member to do it.
Right.
So I just need the financial resources to pay that family member to do it. Or are you one of those individuals that's saying, I want to go in a nursing home? A nursing home can run you $8,000 a year.
No, we just saw what happened. In Hollywood. No, we're not going. We're not going.
We're not going to the nursing home.
No.
Yeah. So I saw on the news the 11th person passed away.
Oof.
So I think that's a bad. Listen, that's less than 1%. I think of what's out there.
Right.
But I think the primary answer to the question is you have to figure out.
Right.
What do you want your long-term care situation to look like?
Right.
Are you going to be in a nursing home? Are you going to be at home? Are you going to pay a family member? Whatever it is that you're going to do, you just want to make sure you're sitting down with someone and sort of walking through that program.
Right.
Looking at the cost, because I will be honest with you, long-term care across the board, it's not going to be cheap. But if you start early, the age that you really want to start sitting down and talking about long-term care, at minimum, is 45.
Right.
45 is a great time to sit down for the first time and say, okay, let me look at my options.
Right.
Let me look at what's out there. And if you start making contributions at 45, then you can be in a very good position when it comes time for that long-term care plan to kick in. Obviously, if you can do it before 45, that's great too.
Right.
But 45 is the age that we generally start sitting down with people and start having conversations about long-term care.
So I guess the best discount option is preparation.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Wow. Well, we got so much more to cover. Don't go anywhere. Keep it moving. Keep it grooving. It's Homegrown.
Everybody wanna be somebody. Everybody wanna be somebody. Every man a done entertainer. I'm guessing
Everybody Want to Be Somebody. And that's Damon Marley from the album Stony Hill. If you don't have it, go get that one. I like that one. I like what's going on in reggae music right about now. Tomorrow on a radio show, we're going to talk about some of the brand new people coming up in the reggae renaissance. So look out for that. Homegrown. We were talking just off, off. I'd say off camera, off air, I should say. Pretty much about the reasons why people do what they do, even the whole long-term care and stuff like that. I look at it from the standpoint of sometimes people being selfish. You get to be a certain part in age, and you know that, you know what, if I didn't prepare for it, somebody's gonna cover it. You know what I mean? And you're mentioning pretty much
Absolutely.
What do you think about that?
Well, one of the things that we were talking about, during the break was we wait until we need something to attempt to pay for it. And anytime you wait until you need something to pay for it, obviously it's going to be outside of your expense range. Mm-hmm. So I think, one of the lessons that we were discussing during the break was we have to start being a little bit more proactive to plan for things far out.
Right.
And that's how you save money in life, period.
Right.
The longer you plan out, the longer you give yourself more time, the less you're going to have to pay out.
Right.
So that's lesson number one. And then lesson number two was we was having a conversation about our culture. Mm-hmm. Our culture of, I raised you, so the least you can do is take care of me.
Yep.
And that is just a culture that I believe we have to move away from.
Right.
Preparation is key. If we prepare correctly, then everybody can win. Everybody can enjoy life, and no one has to be overburdened.
Right.
And then you brought up the question about passing off our debts to each other. Mm-hmm. And before we went on air, we were having conversations about what is the true purpose of life insurance.
Right.
And I was telling you that one of the things that I don't like about life insurance is the name of it.
Right.
Because it is in the name that we in our culture sometimes lose the true meaning of it.
Yeah.
And the true meaning of life insurance, one of the things that it does is it passes wealth from one generation to the next. Mm-hmm. Another thing that it does is it covers liabilities.
Right.
Another thing that it does is it replaces income.
Right.
So again, if we go back to that preparation stage, mm-hmm. do we have life insurance policies that are created to pay off debt and liabilities that's going to be left when someone passes on?
Right.
And that's how we should use it. We should use it as a stopgap to cover future liabilities.
Right.
We should use it as a stopgap to pass wealth so that we're able to continue the family tree and continue to move on. So those are some other things that we can do in addition to long-term care, in addition to our retirement plan, is make sure that we have a legacy plan. And that's the word that I want the audience to really hear. It's called legacy planning.
Right.
How are we going to transition wealth from one generation to the next? Because if we're, and I don't like saying this, mm-hmm. but if we're passing poverty from generation to generation,
right,
then we're never going to close the racial wealth gap.
Yep.
And we can't blame somebody else if we know that we don't have a legacy plan.
True.
And when I use that word legacy, now it sounds completely different.
Completely.
But that's what it's called. A legacy plan means our family tree, our 50 members, we all have $250,000 in life insurance because we're going to have $12 million in future income for the family tree.
Right.
The poverty cycle's just ended.
Wow.
Now we can open up new businesses. Now we can fund education. Now we can have entrepreneurs in the family. Now we're in a position to where long-term care affordability, retirement planning is not as detrimental as it once was.
Yeah, planning post-mortality, and I guess a lot of times some of us don't want to face that either, but it's going to happen. Like you said, there are only two things that's sure in life.
Taxes and death.
Yeah. And I'll tell you that, even having conversations with my father, I've oftentimes said to him pretty much, and I hope he embraces it, but I'm being totally honest in terms of I'm not concerned so much as with what you're going to leave for me. I just would appreciate you not leaving debt. And that's the reason why we work together to get it a certain way, because if it's a scenario where once you get to be an age where you're not able to do certain things, but you've set yourself in a position where it's not, and I'm going to use the word, it's not a burden,
Right.
then I think you've done your due diligence. You've done your just to me. And I mean, shoot, if you want to go take a vacation, do what you got to do. Enjoy those golden years.
Right.
I'll try to get mine. Not saying that there's anything wrong with preparing, like I said, legacy, because it's very important to me what I pass on and what I leave for my child and future children. But from a standpoint of, if you're going to leave me something, please don't let it be a bill.
Yeah, and I think in addition to that, because we're having two conversations, of course, number one, no one wants to be left with debt.
Right.
Whether it's a husband, the wife, the child, no one wants to be left with debt. But let's go back to what we talked about earlier. One of the number one things that wipes out a retirement account is health expenses.
Yep.
Well, guess what? One of the number one things that knocks out working year wealth and the money that you have in your working year accounts can also be health or having to take care of somebody else.
Right.
So when you said earlier, one of the things I don't want you to leave me with is debt, I was finishing the sentence with one of the things I don't want you to leave me with is having to fund and take care of you because we didn't plan for that prior. And it's not that I don't love you, Mom, or I don't love you, Dad, but when you love somebody, you will take the time to plan for these things.
Yes.
And I think one of the things that I personally want to accomplish through financial literacy is that through knowledge, we can have the ability and the power to start being planners.
Right.
Not people who are falling into situations. Because there's no reason, I love what you just said. If we plan for retirement, we plan for long-term care, we plan for how we're going to pass wealth from generation to generation, everybody can live, everybody can be happy, and no one is burdened, no one's wealth is eradicated because of a lack of a plan on one side.
Right.
So I think that is the conversation that we have to walk away with because we all love our families. Some cultures more than others.
Right.
It's all about taking care of the family. It's all about being there for them. We're not speaking against that.
Right.
What we're simply saying is you can do it better if you have a 20-year plan.
Right.
You can do it better if you have a 15-year plan. So that's really what these conversations are all about. And I think whether we're talking about retirement or we're talking about something else, the number one thing that I want to portray tonight is we just want to start having plans.
Right.
We want to have strategies in place. We don't want to live on a whim. One of the other things we said on the break was we have to transition our culture from being spenders to being savers, investors, and planners.
Right.
Because right now, we have $1.3 trillion in spending power.
Right.
Well, that is not a badge of honor. And a lot of people are going to disagree with me saying this because we sell it as a badge of honor. Oh, look at our spending power. Well, what it really means is this. There are advertisers out there who are spending advertising dollars to target our community because they know we're spenders.
Right.
So they want more. In the meanwhile, we're not contributing to retirement. We're not investing, which simply means making your money work for you.
Right.
We're not planning towards the future because we have a live now mindset and culture. We're focused on depreciating assets such as cars. We're focused on clothes that will wither away and disappear.
Right.
Versus a stock and a bond that will increase and make me wealthy. I have an iPhone, but I have no stock in Apple. So therefore, I'm an indentured servant because I'm giving all of my money to Apple, plus I'm paying additional expenses on all of the apps and everything that comes with the phone, but I'm not getting back my equity because I don't have stocks. I don't have bonds. I'm not getting my dividends. I'm just a spender.
Right.
So this conversation is really bigger. It's about transitioning from a spending culture to a culture of people who are focused on the future. And when we say future, we mean retirement, long-term care, investing towards the future, and financial planning and financial literacy. Really making sure that those things are at the forefront, not the spending side of the equation.
Gotcha. And another thing, I've had people who have made an impression on my life, and of course, like I've mentioned, my friends and I share similar thoughts, so we tend to bounce ideas off of each other. I've, however, spoken to younger people, some of them in their 20s, 21, 22, 23, 24, and even a little older, that don't know anything about a 401k. They've never had a conversation even with their parents about a 401k. Sometimes the parents don't know, and of course, it's not based on color or ethnicity because these people aren't always black. Is there in your profession and as you go about your daily endeavors, do you find that there's a distinct difference in the outlook and preparation for retirement with different ethnic groups, or is it mostly about finance, or do you think more than anything else, it's a cultural thing? And like I mentioned, I come across a lot of people, younger people that employees and so forth that I have these conversations with, and I bring it forward to them because it's something that was brought forward to me, and I say to myself,
Well, listen,
what the heck, man?
I gotta make sure I say this the right way. So, okay, let's just do it like this. Financial literacy is not taught in our schools.
Right.
Financial literacy actually is not taught in our colleges unless you're majoring in economics or finance.
Right.
When it comes to conversations in the household, all households are different, but we're at a point in our life now where millennials are separate from the older generations.
Right.
So there's not a lot of conversation that's happening anyway.
Correct.
Then if you look at our politicians and our leaders, rightfully so, their focus is on jobs and education. So the conversation of financial literacy gets left out. And if the parent isn't comfortable, listen, we're just a few generations removed
Right.
from the civil rights movement.
Right.
And as I said to you before, slavery for 400 years, another 162 years before we got into the financial market.
Right.
So we're not used to having those conversations.
True.
And no one wants to be embarrassed. So we don't talk about things that we don't have a comfort level with.
Right.
So my answer to your question is quite simple. The reason I'm committed, the reason I'm here with you tonight, and there's more people like me, we're committed to getting more financial literacy seminars out into the communities.
Right.
So that we can start these dialogues. One of my long-term goals is to create a networking event where the dialogue is all about nothing but financial literacy.
Right.
Having financial literacy meetups, financial hour, where we're really just having these dialogues and these conversations, because you're right. I shared with you earlier, I was at an event last night, and I was speaking to millennials that didn't know what an emergency fund was.
Right.
Didn't understand how retirement works. Didn't know that there was a quarterly report that they should look at.
Right.
Hadn't had these conversations. So I don't blame the parents. I don't blame anybody. I just think it's important for us to understand where we are as a culture. Every single financial metric that's out there,
Right.
we're either dead last or next to last.
Right.
So here's how I'll end your question. I think we are at a place from a cultural standpoint to where we think we're free.
Right.
But when it comes to financial literacy, we're not free.
Right.
So, I could throw out all the stats. It's forecasted by 2020 that it's going to be a $1.5 million wealth gap between the average white family and the average black family. 2 years, it was forecasted that it would take 228 years for the average black family to catch the average white family.
Right.
I could talk about cost burden. Cost burden is when you're paying 1/3 of your income on rent. Okay, over 76% of black families are cost burden.
Right.
Which means the mortgage, the housing expenses are taking up so much of your income that you couldn't invest in yourself even if you wanted to.
Right.
So I know all of these stats because I do financial literacy seminars, and this is what I do each and every single day.
Right.
We got to get this information out into the public, because the reality is this. Our millennials are learning about financial literacy.
Right.
But they're learning it from music. They're learning it from TV. They're learning it from what they see from sports figures
Right.
who are on the field. And all of them are not negative people.
Right.
But when a young, impressionable 11-year-old sees a boxer with 6 Bugattis and a bag full of cash,
Yep.
then his idea of financial literacy becomes, when I do get money, I need to buy as many cars as I can. When I do get money, I need to buy as many watches as I can.
Right.
And so when that message is dominating the conversation, your child is being taught, your millennial is being taught. They're just not being taught what they need to be taught.
Right. Right.
So the answer to your question is simply this. We as a community have to come together. Our leaders in the churches, our politicians, our community leaders have to decide that this conversation of financial literacy is going to start being a priority and not fall to the wayside.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, it's sometimes, like we mentioned earlier, the conversation just needs to start. You know, a lot of times we dance around it. You know, we dance around it because it is a sensitive issue. You know, also, depending on how in depth you get with the conversation, then you're revealing your financial situation. A lot of times people don't want to do that.
Yeah, I think everybody has to remember pride comes before the fall.
True.
So you got 2 choices. You can be prideful and fall, or we can do what we tell our children to do. We always say there's no such thing as a stupid question.
Right.
Unless you're an adult, I guess. Right?
Yeah, I never thought of it that way, but you're so right.
Right. So
You're so right.
So what I would say to your audience is there's no such thing as a stupid question.
Right.
And it doesn't matter what age you are. So if you don't know what a Roth IRA is, then you sit down with someone and you have that conversation.
Right.
You know, but again, I'm going to say what I said earlier. I do believe that information is important. If you don't know what a Roth IRA is, Google it, read about it, and then go sit down with a financial professional.
Right.
That way you'll at least have 6 or 7 bullet points to where you know what they're talking about.
Right.
But you still need their expertise because guess what? A Roth IRA is just a shell.
Right.
I'm going to say something real quick to the audience because I do want to educate. A 401k, a Roth IRA, a traditional IRA, SEP, simple, doesn't matter what they're called.
Right.
They're all mutual funds.
Right. True.
And a mutual fund is simply an investment fund that has multiple securities, stocks and bonds on the inside. Mm-hmm. So what changes all these mutual funds is tax treatment. Right?
Right.
That's the difference between a Roth IRA and a traditional IRA. It's tax treatment.
Right.
Simple, SEP, 401k, it's all tax treatment.
Right.
But they're all investment funds.
Gotcha.
So the most important thing I need for everybody to understand here is that's what is inside of your traditional, your Roth, your 401k. Mm-hmm. It's in securities, stocks, and bonds.
Right.
Different kinds. Now, on the job, what they will do is they will preload them. So they are self-made investment funds that already have a certain batch of stocks and bonds configured a certain way to work towards your retirement. But they're all mutual funds put together with a certain tax treatment. Nice. So it's just important to kind of understand that.
All right. Well, speaking of which, what I'm going to do is when I get back, I got a question. I got a question regarding that too, being that, you know, like we said, we've explained, they're all mutual funds, investments at work, regardless how you look at it and whichever one of those outlets you choose. Anyways, we got so much more for you. Keep it moving, keep it grooving. It's Homegrown.
The pressures of a life and it tough. No stay down, mama, time pick it up. No bother with the down, full style, strictly up, full vibes. I pick it up when the bills, them, the rent and the mortgage due. Yeah. When me chalice, when your best friends are gone and it's only you. Yeah. Like a pass, split, turn up the music. Skanking sweet, everybody wanna feel like free. Forget your troubles and the rock with me. You know, everything together. So make we sing together. And who say life no order? And every man got this struggle. I beg you to help me, Lord, and let me overcome my struggles. Skanking sweet, everybody wanna feel like free. Forget your troubles and rock with me. You know feel a reggae music sweet, yeah. Skanking sweet, everybody wanna feel like free. Forget your troubles and rock with me. You know feel a reggae music sweet, yeah. Skanking sweet.
Yeah, man, that is Chronics from the album Chronology. That one is Skanking Sweet, one of my favorite albums out right now. Make sure you go get a copy of that. Chronics are going well. We need to see you on that South Florida tour. We're just talking about, Marcus, the fact that all these different retirement strategies, they're mutual funds. Had a conversation with somebody today as far as world climate goes. You know, we see the potential of wars. Whether or not it's going to happen is up for debate. But we see the potential of that and infrastructure being damaged by natural disasters and so forth. What can one do? And I'm asking the question of what can you do, what you really can't do anything, I guess. What can you do to mentally or what tell yourself that you can protect your current investment during these crazy world times?
Very simple answer. We talked about it earlier. Is diversification. That's the only thing that you can do to protect yourself.
Right.
Is diversification. You don't want to have all your eggs in one basket.
Right.
You want to have your money in different places. So what do I mean by that? Maybe I might have some of my money in stocks. Maybe I might have some of my money in bonds. Maybe I might have some of my money in cash equivalents. When I say cash equivalents, we're talking about CDs. We're talking about bankers' acceptance. I might have some of my money in real estate.
Right.
I might have some of my money in fixed income securities. I might have some of my money in U.S. securities or government securities, municipal bonds. There's all different ways that you can put your money out there. But here's the one thing you don't want to do. And we were talking about this on the break. There's no reason to be afraid of the stock market.
Right.
The United States of America is a wealthy country because of the stock market.
Right.
The wealthy people that you see out there, they're not wealthy because they worked hard and just saved their money getting 0.5 and 1%. They're wealthy because they saved their money and they turned around and invested it and they got 20%.
Yep.
So I think the important thing here is to not be afraid of the stock market, to understand that is the system that we have in this country for building wealth. And what you have to do is you have to look at your particular financial situation and build a strategy around that. And what do I mean by that? We've talked about this before. You know I'm a firm believer in an emergency fund.
Right.
If you don't have an emergency fund, you have no business in the stock market.
Right.
Outside of your retirement.
Right.
Because your retirement is going to be in the stock market regardless if you want it or not. It's in the stock market.
Yep.
But outside of your retirement, you shouldn't be in the stock market if you don't have an emergency fund. Why? An emergency fund is 3 months, 6 months, or 1 year of your annual salary.
Right.
That is your fallback. If you ever meet a financial advisor, financial professional, financial planner, whatever it is that they call themselves, and they look you in the eyes and say, I can guarantee you if you put your money in the market, I'm going to make you money, then that person has basically just lied to you.
Right.
Because the number one rule when we're in the market is we're not allowed to tell you we can guarantee you anything.
Right. It's a risk.
We can speak hypothetically. We can speak historical, 5-year, 10-year, 20-year performance on a fund or on an individual stock or a bond or whatever it may be. We can speak hypothetically. We can speak historically, but we cannot look you in the eyes and say, I promise you, you are going to get 10%. You're going to get 20%.
Right.
The only thing that we can promise you is that you are assuming risk. And that there is a chance, if we don't do things correctly, that you could lose it all.
Right.
And I'm not afraid to say that to people. Now, my job is to make sure you don't lose it all.
Right.
And my reputation is built on making sure you don't lose it all.
Right.
But I can't sit here and lie to you and tell you that, this is just guaranteed.
Right.
So, that brings me to another topic. Now, there are guarantees out there. There's such things as fixed annuities. There are other instruments within the banks that are guaranteed and backed by the banks.
Right.
So there are different level of investments where you can find guarantees. Whole life insurance is a guaranteed product. So there are a lot of instruments out there where you do have guarantees, but you need at some point or at some place to be able to position yourself to take advantage of what's going on in the market. We're on a 9-year bull run
Right.
where the market average is 9.9%. If you're not participating in the market over these last 9 years and you're not getting that average 9.9%, and all your money is sitting in the bank and you're getting 0.5 and 1%, that's just like participating in a 401k and not getting a match.
Yep.
So
That is true.
I don't want people to be foolhardy and go out there and jump into the market and you don't understand what you're doing. Again, you want to have an emergency fund.
Right.
As much as I love to simplify things, the market is not a place to play games.
Right.
You have people who are working 40 to 50 to sometimes 60 hours a week doing research and analysis to understand how to make decisions in the market.
Right.
So for you to be a YouTube or Google warrior and decide that, you know what, I'm going to jump out there on my own and I'm smart enough and I'm going to do it myself, the average individual investor is getting about 2.5%.
Right.
The market average is 9.9%. So you might hear your best friend say something like, oh, I did it on my own and I got 20%. That doesn't mean that you're going to get 20%.
Right.
So this is not something to play around with. You want to have that emergency fund. You want to have a strong budget and cash flow process. You want to have a surplus from which you are pulling resources to go into the market.
Right.
And then you want to make sure, again, that you're seeking wisdom and counsel, and that you're getting advice, and that you fully understand the repercussions of the decisions that you're going to want to make. And
Right.
I'll finish here. Mutual funds are a great place for beginners to start because it's just like your retirement account.
Right.
It's already sort of built and put together for you. You are mitigating the risk.
Right.
You are mitigating the expense, just like a group healthcare plan.
Right.
That's sort of like how a mutual fund operates. You have a bunch of people in one thing. It drives down the price. Now, if I go with an individual stock, let's say Apple, for example, that's at $147 a share. Well, I got to have some serious money to buy 100 shares.
Yep.
I can't sit here and say, oh, I'm just going to put in $500.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations. You just got 5 shares of Apple.
Good
and I want to say this real quick. 5 shares of Apple at $147 a share means in order for you to make money,
Yeah.
you're going to need for Apple to jump up to about $200 a share
For it to be profitable.
for it to be profitable.
Yeah.
So this is not, as much as I try to simplify things, this is one of those areas where you can't simplify this.
Right.
Research, analysis, making sure that you are financially strong, disciplined, and in a good place. I'm going to repeat it again. You should have an emergency fund of 3, 6 months to a year. You should have a strong budget and cash flow process.
Right.
You're able to pay your bills. You understand how to save. You know, you are in a position to where you're able to do these things and you're not taking risks that's going to affect your family's livelihood.
Well, trust me, that's a lot of information. What we're going to do is this, because I do think it's, we started out with retirement and definitely for personal reasons. We definitely want to go get into financial literacy, wealth building, wealth management, and also paying for college. You know, a lot of people, a lot of my friends have kids that are young, but we also have some that are about to head off to college. You know, and then that's a cost that, you know, we're looking forward to education. We're not looking forward to that cost. So speaking with you, I can tell you're passionate about not just retirement strategies, like I said, for people, but like I mentioned earlier, people in general. If there are people that need some advice, do you want to leave any information where they can reach you?
No, absolutely. My cell phone number is 205-249-7167. That's the best way to reach me. I'm also on Facebook. Marcus Moon is my name. you pull that name up. There's not a lot of us out there. So I think I'm one of the first ones that come up.
Yes, you are.
And I don't know how much time we have left, but one thing we didn't talk about is transitioning into retirement. A lot of people don't understand annuities.
It's a word that sometimes people seem to be scared of, though.
At some point, everybody's going to end up in an annuity.
Right.
Because if you don't end up in an annuity, what's going to happen is your money is going to stay in a risk bucket.
Right.
So the reason that people transition into annuities at the end of retirement is that is how you create that income stream. Now,
So annuity is not a bad thing.
no, annuity is not a bad thing at all. Now, there are different types of annuities.
Right.
There's fixed annuities, there's variable annuities, there's index annuities, et cetera, et cetera. I'm talking about fixed annuities right now because we're talking about retirement.
Right, right.
A variable annuity is an accelerator. It might be a vehicle that you use to still get accumulation as you're building towards your retirement years.
Right.
But I'm talking about retirement. It's time for me to retire. I'm about to transition into retirement. Now we're having those conversations about rollovers and transfers
Right.
and moving funds into an annuity. When you move funds into an annuity versus leaving it in your investment fund. So let's say I have my money in a 401k. I choose to leave it there and take my distributions directly from the 401k.
Right.
Well, guess what? That money's still in the market. So if the market crashes, now I've depleted my resources. So the reason in your retirement years that we transition into a fixed annuity is so that you can get your money into a safe place that's
Right.
no longer tied to the market, and you're able to create that income stream. And there's all kinds of annuities out there. We don't have enough time probably to get into all of them.
Right.
But that's where you sit down with a professional and you go over that information. But again, this is the simple thing with annuities. Two things. I'm getting my money out of the market. I'm getting it into a fixed environment where I'm not assuming any more risk.
Right.
And number two, I'm creating an income stream. You can also have beneficiaries that are tied to it. Annuities have death benefits. We could go on and on and on. But the annuity is, in most cases, the final resting place for your sources of retirement income.
Wow.
So I just wanted to throw that out there real quick because we didn't
No,
get
and
a
I
chance to talk
appreciate it.
about that.
Because it brought us full circle. You know, we started out where you're putting the money. Now we got to talk about how you're going to get it out.
Absolutely.
And the best ways to get it out.
And then one other thing I'll say about annuities is annuities are tax deferred. Because a lot of times people have conversations about CDs versus annuities.
Right.
Because annuities are not just retirement vehicles.
Right.
Annuities are repositioning of asset vehicles. CDs are taxable every single year.
Right.
In most cases, CDs are getting 1%, 1.5%. Annuities have the ability to get compounding interest, competitive rates to CDs as well. But the growth, the tax deferral, can be a great advantage for repositioning of assets as well.
Right.
So annuity is not a bad word. Annuity is a financial instrument that is there
Right.
for the purpose of you to reposition assets, for the purpose of creating an income stream, and for the purpose of taking care of your beneficiaries as well. So if you want more information on that, that's something I would look into. What I love about being in my position is I don't have any babies. I don't have any babies or favorites. So what I mean by that is if you was to ask me, Marcus, what do you like the best? A Roth IRA or traditional IRA, an annuity or a mutual fund, individual stock or a bond. I'm going to look at you and say, I like best what fits your financial need.
Right. And everybody's is different.
And anybody that's in my position should answer the question that way.
Right.
What is best for your particular financial need?
Right.
That is the answer to the question. It's not a cookie cutter process.
Right.
It's not a one size fits all. It's all about what does the job that you are looking to do.
Everybody's situation is unique.
So I didn't mean to go off on a long tangent.
Nah, but
But I
it
just
came
wanted
full circle.
I just wanted to make sure people understand how to transition into retirement. And with the transfers and rollovers, a lot of people don't know this. When you do a transfer, you're moving the money from custodian to custodian. You don't take that tax penalty on your tax bracket plus the 10%.
Right.
When you do a rollover, you're receiving the money.
Right.
So you do take the penalty.
Right.
So a lot of people don't understand the difference between rollovers and transfers.
And we definitely got to talk about some of that stuff. Because like I said, it's these are conversations that I have had. Of course, you know, we're having them amongst ourselves with whatever little information we've gathered and so forth. So there's so much we need to learn. But, you know, we got somewhere we're going to go into. Keep it moving, keep it grooving. It is Homegrown.
And when the rain a fall, the ground still tough.
Still tough.
All mama head I tell we things wrong.
Things wrong.
Yeah. Now tell me if you see it like me. The words they speak are not true on TV. How can things be getting better when so much people still are suffer? Them say things that get better, but we can't see it. Can't see it, we can't. Them say money a run right and all, but pocket still I feel it. Still I feel it. Can't sleep at night because we stress out. Every month and that talk about kick out. Make our ends now meet. People line up on street. Change is what we need. Tell me if you're going through this, working all day and night and still can't live a good life. Tell me if you're going through this, the money where you make done before it reach your hand, my friend. Tell me if you're going through this. Now no money for gas stars, so you can't to drive your car. Tell me if you're going through this. Every day I wonder if no better life, no dead for you. Them say things that get better, but we can't see it. Can't see it, we can't. Them say money a run right and all, but pocket still I feel it. Still I feel it. Can't sleep at night because we stress out. Every month and that talk about kick out. Make our ends now meet. People line up on street. Change is what we need. Tell me if you're going through this, working up overtime and still can't pay your bills on time. Tell me if you're going through this. The work are hard.
Yeah, man, that is Morgan Heritage with Ends Now Meet, and that one is on a Scriptures rhythm. So almost that time. Like I said, Marcus, drop the info for them one more time where they can contact you or where they can find you.
So I'm from Birmingham, Alabama, even though I live here in Florida. So area code 205-249-7167. Or you can hit me up on Facebook, Marcus Moon, and I should be one of the first ones that will come up. And that's the best way to reach me.
All right. Well, we want to first of all thank you so much for stopping by and talking to me and the Homegrown family. We are definitely looking forward to talking to you again, to having you back on the program so we can get into those financial literacy information a little bit more in depth. Like you said, life insurances and so forth, and different investment avenues that people can get into. It's just a wealth of information out there that people do need to have, and would definitely benefit from this conversation. So we're looking forward to having you back on sometime soon. And the other thing too, for all those people again with the teenagers are about to go off to college, very important thing. It's not as simple as it sounds. It's not just dollars and cents. It's how you're going to make those dollars and cents work. Because like we were talking about earlier, you know, a degree could cost you a decent amount. A degree could cost you an exorbitant amount. Right. But, you know, we'll definitely get into that. Anyways, there you have it. Thank you so much for tuning in. It has indeed been a pleasure. Remember, be safe, be kind, and be good to each other. My name is G. Cole, and this is Homegrown.
Girl, I promise I will be there for you through the ups and the downs. You can count on me. If ever you're feeling lonely, I will be there for you, yeah. You can count on me when the chips are down. You can count on me when skies look gray, yeah. And girl, I want you to know that you're my best friend, and no tide could ever drift me away. Girl, I promise I will be there for you through the ups and the downs. You can count on me. If ever you're feeling lonely, I will be there for you, yeah. For you, yeah.
And that is Jay Will on the Raps and Kush Band with Love Your Life.
Nakikinika sa música, Homegrown with G. Cole.
Estás escuchando Homegrown con G. Cole.
您现在正在收听的是 Homegrown with G. Cole.
You're listening to Homegrown with G. Cole.
Remember, all the music played here on the Homegrown podcast is available on iTunes and all your digital retailers. Please support the artists.